In this session, we're going to talk about a topic that really piques a lot of people's interest, namely the book of Revelation. We'll look at, first of all, the genre of Revelation. By genre, we mean what type of literature is this? And as we'll see, our answer to that question will have a big impact on how we understand and how we interpret the book of Revelation. We'll look then at the purpose of Revelation, and finally, the time orientation of Revelation. The genre or type of literature of Revelation is a somewhat difficult topic for modern readers because we don't have anything in our modern repertoire that really matches what Revelation is doing. And not only is it complicated for that reason, it's also complicated because it is a complex writing of its own, in its own right. And when you look at Revelation, you begin right at the beginning to notice that it's actually consisting of letters to the churches. So we can say, first of all, Revelation, the genre of Revelation is letter. So all of the ideas and things that we talked about in our earlier lectures about letters, we need to keep those in mind again here. But we also notice that the book of Revelation calls itself a book of prophecy. But once again, we get in trouble because what we mean by prophecy is not that close to what the Bible means when it uses the word prophecy. Prophecy, we think of prophecy as telling about the future. And there is an element of telling about the future in biblical prophecy. But more importantly, biblical prophecy is what some people have called not foretelling, but forthtelling. Meaning to say, it's telling the truth. It's telling the truth for the purpose of correcting, rebuking, and in some cases even encouraging the hearers for that. So we have epistle or letter, we have prophecy, but we also can call it apocalyptic. Apocalyptic is, again, it's not a genre that we use today, but apocalyptic, I won't go into the full definition of that, but basically apocalyptic is a kind of literature that takes a worldview in which God is about to break in to the world. And it often has angelic mediaries who come and tell the recipient of the information about what's happening and how God is going to break in and change all of the circumstances of the people that are the audience, and how God is going to bring them to some sort of victory. So that's a worldview of apocalyptic. And apocalyptic was a widely known genre in the ancient world. So for us, it seems so strange, so difficult to understand. But when we realize, oh, apocalyptic, they knew what that was and the shape of it and what to expect from it, then it was more clear to them than it is to us. So we can see just from the definition, that kind of rough definition that I gave you, you can see many similarities. If you've read the book of Revelation, you see, oh yes, that does sound like what we see in Revelation. So the conclusion is we have these three genres. Epistle, yes, it must be epistle because there's letters actually there to the churches and so forth. Prophecy, we can't neglect to think of it as prophecy because it claims to be prophecy. But again, be very careful because what the Bible means by prophecy is not identical to what we usually think of when we say prophecy. And then this apocalyptic, which lends this otherworldly aspect to what we read in the book of Revelation. So as I say, it's really important to keep track of those genre elements when we consider how to understand the book of Revelation, especially when it comes to apocalyptic, because apocalyptic has something to say about the purpose of the book of Revelation. If you're like a lot of people, when you read the book of Revelation, First reaction, oh, it's so confusing. Second reaction, oh no, it's so scary, makes me afraid. Very, very common reactions to reading Revelation these days. The other one, not so much an individual reaction, but a corporate reaction, is division. How the church is divided over the interpretation of the book of Revelation. But I can say to you with great confidence, none of those three was the purpose of the author of Revelation. The author had no interest in confusing his audience. No, that wasn't it at all. If he wanted to confuse, well, I probably wouldn't have written to them. It wasn't for fear. It wasn't to create division, quite the opposite. So what was the purpose if it's not those things? The purpose very clearly, as we understand what apocalyptic is doing, apocalyptic is written, apocalyptic generally, but especially the book of Revelation, it is written to bring encouragement. Huh? Encouragement? Yes. In the face of persecution. You see, the author of the book of Revelation was writing to people who were experiencing persecution. And if you remember how Revelation ends, it ends in God's triumph. That's a word of encouragement to someone who is feeling oppressed, persecuted, in danger of physical harm even. When you realize God wins in the end, that's a word of encouragement. For us, if we're not encouraged, maybe it's because we're not facing persecution when we read the book of Revelation. So the purpose, when we realize that this book is written to real people in the first century who are undergoing persecution, it's a word to them, a word of encouragement. So we need to hear it first how they would have heard it. Once we hear it as they hear it, then it can become a word of encouragement to us as well. There are 4 possible time perspectives or time orientations to the book of Revelation. I won't go into all of the details of all of those in this brief video, but let me say, first of all, is the time orientation called preterist. Preterist views the book of Revelation, takes the historical place of the book of Revelation very, very seriously, and it views all of the events, except those in chapters 20 through 22, it views all of those events as already having taken place. As Gordon Fee, one of my former professors, used to say, it was in their future, but our past. So those events were imminent to them, meaning just about to happen for them. But now they've taken place. They have to do, in this view, they have to do with the Roman Empire, and how the Roman Empire was controlling and persecuting the early church, and how the Roman Empire would be destroyed. Well, surely we can say that is in our past. So when we understand the genre of the book of Revelation as apocalyptic, as prophecy, as epistles to real people in the first century, we can see how this would have been a word of encouragement about the things that are about to take place. You can say things are going to get worse before they get better, but God is guaranteeing that they're going to get better. That's the message. A second view is called the futurist view. In this view, all of the events that are depicted, except perhaps chapters 1 through 5, are viewed not only in their future, but also our future. This is a very popular way of looking at Revelation. The problem that I have with this particular view is that it doesn't take seriously the genre of Revelation. It doesn't take seriously the purpose, that grows out of the audience and the author's historical place and how they were using the genre familiar at the time to communicate. So the more that we know about the genre and the expectations of the genre, the more we understand that futurist is not the best way of looking at this marvelous book. But that's not a popular word to us. We really like this idea of the mystery of the future unfolding. We have from Revelation everything we need to know about the future. There is, as I mentioned, even in the preterist view, there is a part of Revelation that is still in our future. But that's the part that is describing God's final victory. The final victory. And it's sure. That's what we need to know. That's what we need to know about the future. We don't need to know all of the particular details of how it's all going to come about. But surely we can stand in great confidence in deep and enduring hope that God is in control and that He wins in the end. The third kind of time orientation is called the historicist view. On this view, and I won't spend as much time on this one, but on the historicist view, the events described in Revelation are not seen as specific events so much as they depict stages in the development of church history. So it's as if we're told in advance how the church will progress throughout the ages. An interesting view, but again, it doesn't take seriously the first century understanding of the genre of Revelation. The fourth and final time orientation is called the idealist. In this view, Revelation is not about real events, but rather it's depicting the timeless struggle between good and evil. So that these are not depicting prophetic events, or maybe even we could say apocalyptic events, but rather just general ideas about the struggle, good versus evil, how they fight back and forth. And again, good wins in the end, because God wins in the end. So those are the four possible time orientations. Perhaps I haven't convinced you in this brief video. I invite you to study deeply on these four time orientations. When we look at the book of Revelation, the most important thing to recognize is that it is theology for encouragement. If you don't agree with anything else I said in this video, at least catch this one. It is the purpose of Revelation is encouragement. It teaches theology, and the theology is that God is the one who wins. In the end, no matter what else happens, God wins. That's the good news for us. Second thing I want to leave you with is to challenge you to read literarily. Not to read literally, as if those words can be read at face value, but to recognize literarily, meaning to say according to the literary purpose, the literary genre, and the literary techniques that the author employs. Revelation is filled with symbols. Part of our problem in understanding the book of Revelation is that we've lost the referent. We don't know what those symbols mean anymore. I should mention that a great percentage of the symbols that are used in Revelation are from the Old Testament. And because the church today is so often impoverished on their understanding of the Old Testament, then they fail to understand even the book of Revelation. But beyond that, many of the symbols are drawn from contemporary life in the first century. And we're not first century people. We haven't lived there. We don't know what those symbols are. And so we've lost them. And that's why some of the confusion comes. But when we learn to read literarily, we look at those symbols and try to interpret them in light of what the author intended for those. And we read according to the genre. of the book of Revelation. And finally, I want to leave you with this. The book of Revelation is filled with theology. Too often we only read Revelation for answers about the end times, or also called eschatology. But all of the doctrines are in the book of Revelation. So read not only with eye to the future, but read for theology. What does this say about God? What does it say about the people of God? What does it say about the nature of good and evil and how God is in control of all?